Welcome, everyone, to the WIE Champions National Conversation around race and equity. We're very excited today to have a tremendous speaker and financial industry leader to talk with us about our efforts here in Charlotte and the implications not only for the state and certainly for the nation as others are watching how we address this very important issue of racial equity. Let me first say a few words about who we are as the Women's Intercultural Exchange. I'm Nick Wharton, Chair of the WIE Champions. I'm also President and CEO of the Charlotte Area Fund, Mecklenburg County community action agency dedicated to serving those low-wealth individuals for over 60 years. The Women's Intercultural Exchange was established in 2005 by three very ambitious women, Stephanie Counts, Dee Dixon, and Joan Zimmerman. Based on evidence-based research, their conclusions were that women of color had various levels of distrust among each other. And the idea is that WIE would build trust across race, culture, and gender. Not surprisingly, across those demographics, they discovered that men were least trusted in the organizations that they worked in. And so the WIE Women's Intercultural Exchange was founded. Shortly after, the Champions was founded to build similar levels of trust and social capacity across race and gender among diverse male leaders. And so today we're close to 65 men who meet regularly and have very intense conversations about issues of the day and also public policy, and much very important businesses come out of those events. One of our wonderful members who's very rarely misses a meeting is Hugh McCall, the founder of Bank of America. And his voice is always heard in our meetings. In fact, I was going to say when he speaks, it's like E.F. Hutton, but in fact, I suspect E.F. Hutton has had to listen to him at times. So we have a very vibrant organization that has continued to create opportunities for important conversations. So today, we're very excited on this first day of Women's History Month to have an incredible speaker who shares some thoughts about racial equity outcomes, because let's face it, every important initiative that has impacted the growth and development of Charlotte, Bank of America has been at the core of it. They've helped move this city and this region, and quite frankly, the state, to where we are today. So with that, let me introduce our speaker for today. After he speaks, I'll introduce a panel who will have a few questions to pose to our speaker. And in fact, they perhaps will have reactions to the comments that are made. So let me begin by introducing our illustrious speaker, who's just an amazing business leader. And we're so pleased that he's decided to join us today. Kieth Cockrell is the president of Bank of America Charlotte, head of executive escalations and sports sponsorships. I'll share a few items about his background that gives you a context of the kind of leader that we have with us today. He also serves as head of escalations and sports sponsorship for the company. As president of Bank of America, he is responsible for connecting banking investment resources offered through the bank's 8 lines of business to people and companies across the region, deploying Bank of America's resources to address social and economic concerns, and helping local communities thrive. Kieth recently served as a Global Technology and Operations Chief Officer with responsibility for programs, business controls, oversight operations, as well as external relationships with nearly 95,000 employees and contractors in more than 35 countries. Prior to that, Kieth serves as the head of specialty client services for consumer and small business and president of Bank of America, Michigan. During his 38-year career in financial services, Kieth has held a number of key executive roles, including COO for consumer and small businesses, National Community Markets Executive responsible for 1,800 financial centers, President of Customer Service and Support responsible for all call center operations, and executive leading the debit card and ATM businesses. He has also led specialty client services, life services, and employee financial services and client escalations. Kieth is a passionate ally and advocate for a diverse and inclusive workforce. Previously, he served as vice chair of the Global Diversity and Inclusion Council. In his role, he was instrumental in establishing several employee networks, including the Black Professional Group, the Hispanic Latino Organization for Leadership and Advancement, the Military Support and Assistance Group, and the Black Executive Advisory Council. In 2019, he received 2 D&I awards, the Root Award and the Vanguard Award, for his role promoting equality, unity, and multiculturalism. He's an active member and advisor to several employee networks. Active in the community, he co-chaired the 2020 Charlotte City Bond Campaign. He plays a vital role on various boards with local organizations, including board chair of the Levine Museum of the New South, the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance, Foundation for Carolinas Community Real Property Holdings, and My Brother's Keeper, Charlotte Mecklenburg, Providence Day School Board, and Davidson College. He also serves on the boards of United Way, Goodwill Industries, Second Harvest Food Bank of Metrolina, and the American Diabetes Association, which recently named him Father of the Year. Kieth is a Michigan Chronicle Men of Excellence honoree and received the Excellence in Economic Development Award from the 100 Black Men of Detroit. Now, what I know of Kieth personally, as I look at this amazing profile of accomplishments, we could very easily inverse this list of items and put Father of the Year at the top, husband at the top, because he has an unbelievably fierce wife, Serena, who has been by his side, and he would attribute much of his success to the balanced world that he lives in. And so when Kieth ascended to the current role that he is in, I have to tell you, I have not seen such warmth in the community and admiration for a leader that has ascended to this position at this time. So with I give you Kieth Cockrell, and you're on.
Well, Nick, thank you for the warm welcome. It's a pleasure to join you, my friend, and acknowledge all the commitment that you've had over the years, really, to initiatives that are important to all of us, and what the leadership role that you continue to play here in the Charlotte and really throughout our state. So it's a pleasure for me to be with you today. I want to offer a few thoughts and comments for our discussion, and then look forward to engaging in some Q&A, as this, from my perspective, is a critical time. We recognize that there are world events that are occurring that has many of us consumed about the safety of people across this world. But our opportunity before us here in Charlotte is significant. And I feel very, very blessed to be part of an organization that has had a true willingness to lean in on these opportunities, and to be in a city that enjoys great leadership, not only from our elected officials, including our mayor, Mayor Lyles, but also a business community that has been interlinked with the growth and development of our city really throughout our history. And so for us here at Bank of America, and for me specifically, we recognize that this is our home, this is our headquarters, and we feel a real obligation to continue to provide support, assistance, and quite frankly, leadership for our city. The good news is that, as we all know, our city continues to grow. But with that growth comes additional challenges. And we're doing our level best to understand the challenges and get out in front of them. But nonetheless, it creates new opportunities for us to continue to learn, grow, and develop. Many of us are be heading off to Austin tomorrow with the Charlotte Regional Alliance to do some analysis regarding another city that has enjoyed explosive growth, was tremendously popular, and now you're seeing some fractures, some concerns, and that's Austin, Texas. And so many of us are looking forward to going down to Austin to compare and contrast, understand what's led to their explosive growth and the number of corporations that they've been able to attract to Austin, but also to learn from some of the things that they would do differently, or the things that we don't want to be part of our growing economy here in Charlotte. So let me just offer a couple of thoughts. A few years ago, I think for many of us in the Black community, our lives changed dramatically. I was part of a company that I feel very, very strongly about, that has given me an opportunity to grow and develop, provide leadership, and has demonstrated over the years that they would support some of the things that I was specifically interested in. I made a conscious decision that although this company we call Bank of America may not have been everything that I wanted it to be, I felt as though that they demonstrated that I had a voice and that they were willing to listen. And so I've been fortunate to, I guess, first have the courage to express that voice, find that voice, and share it. And then be willing to actively roll up my sleeves to create a change. And so for the majority of my career, I took great pride in helping all types of people and teammates grow and develop and enjoy the benefits that I had received throughout my career in growth and development in the company. But after the killing of George Floyd, you know, it was an inflection point for me, without question. And I just felt that there was much more that I needed to do. Although I had been involved in communities where I lived for really all of my professional career, my efforts seemed to be shallow. I just thought that there was more that I needed to do for children and for people of color, quite frankly. And I shared recently that I was even pondering was the time for me to actually retire from the company. And not because I had some disappointment about where I was in my career, it wasn't some, you know, inflection point for me. I had actually never been concerned about my retirement from Bank of America. I felt very confident that, you know, the man I served, he would tell me when it was time for me to do something else, and I was very secure in that. And so I was really prayerful, I guess, and introspective that was this the moment? And I just feel very, very fortunate that I was able to continue to have a voice and share that voice with, you know, executives here at Bank of America, which led to this opportunity for me. You see that, you know, throughout the course of my career, as Nick expressed, I've been very, very blessed. I don't know, I've had more than 23, 24 different assignments throughout my career, career here at Bank of America. And I'm pleased to say that I've only posted for 2 jobs in my entire career with Bank of America. So I dedicated myself to doing great work, not just good work, having great results and doing it the right way with people. And I really felt that my success was based on the fact that I was inclusive and tried to treat people, not be just a good teammate, but be a great teammate. And that over the years, that's led to not just what I know and the impact that I felt that I could have on the communities that I serve or the clients that I serve, but I had the benefit of the knowledge of so many thousands of people that I've been in contact with over the course of my career that just made me better. It wasn't just what I knew, but because I treated them well, what they knew, and I could draw upon that. So this moment in time just seemed that I needed to do much more. It wasn't enough for me to chase another, I guess, financial plan, a profit plan for a business that I was running. That I needed to be more engaged, and that led to a discussion that no, I didn't need to retire from the firm, that I could be more engaged with the community and with clients and businesses and and lean in on the topics that I really were most important to me, and still do it in the company. So I feel very, very fortunate that I had this tremendous blessing to serve as president here in Charlotte for Bank of America, and I'm doing my level best to leverage the relationships and the experience the business experience that I've had over the course of these years, and the role, quite frankly, that we have at Bank of America here in this community. So relationships matter individually, but in my role as president, from my perspective, it really doesn't mean very much unless you can leverage the relationships. So like Nick, I've known Nick for many, many years. I've known our mayor for decades, I guess, long before I was president of Bank of America or she was mayor of our city. And so it creates an opportunity to really leverage those relationships, hopefully to help others that perhaps are less fortunate or need just some guidance. And so I don't apologize that I'm a product of my experience, that people, teachers, educators, coaches, neighbors poured something into me, saw something in me, and believed in me and inspired me to be better, to do better. And so because of that, I'm passionate about our youth in this city and trying to ensure that every child doesn't just have an opportunity for a good education, but that they understand that we're not looking for just A, B on a roll. We're looking for excellence, that they have the ability, many of them have the ability to be A students. And so, yes, we have some challenges right now because of COVID and the like, but I want them to know you daily. I want them to know how it counts and know their story, your story. And I want them to know Nick's background, and for that matter, know my background, and recognize that I too were faced with challenges, obstacles as a young person. But thank God there were guiding hands and people in my ear to encourage me that I could be more and do more, even though I didn't see it, perhaps, but they believed in me. And so it's a tremendous honor and just a blessing for me to now have the opportunity to lead Bank of America here with the support of our CEO, Brian Moynihan, and his commitment. And so after the George Floyd killing, we made the decision that we as a company needed to do more. And we announced initially $1 billion commitment that's now $1.25 billion commitment to economic development, focused on how could we create wealth and support small businesses because of their wealth creation as business owners. We need to do more in housing because we recognize that for many of us, for me specifically, I've had the opportunity of working in many cities across the country. And for the most part, my real estate transactions have been accretive to my portfolio, my financial portfolio. That when I bought a home because of a new opportunity in San Francisco, when I decided to sell, well, let me be honest, when Serena sold that house, that we made money on those transactions. And so that helped us as a young family continue to grow financially to provide the type of lifestyle and living for our children. And so now I find myself with this awesome responsibility to try to do good, not only for what we do inside the company, but outside these four walls of Bank of America. And so my focus today is really obviously on trying to ensure the 18,000 employees, as today we welcomed all of our teammates back to the business environment. That's a critical milestone for us, not only because we believe in collaboration and working together in person, but also we recognize that inside this loop, there are so many other businesses and restaurant owners that depend on my teammates being here. And they've been waiting for there to be a collective group of folks so they can open and have lunch and we open up business travel again, obviously in a safe way. So my focus on my teammates clearly starts and ends with their health and safety. We'll be smart about that. But in addition, we're excited about their level of engagement because one of the things that makes us who we are at Bank of America is because we do believe that a healthy community, healthy businesses, is just not a social calling. It's good business. It's good for us. And so for so many of my teammates, they're anxious to get back out there and support Kay at the food bank or be in person to provide reading tutoring or math tutoring to students in Charlotte public schools. So we're looking forward to that. And we know that's something that we've missed. And so that level of engagement is critically important for me to lead by example in that way. But fundamentally, we also are in business to support clients. And there may be a better bank out there here in Charlotte, or for that matter, across the US. But there's one thing that I'm very confident in saying, and that is that we're going to continue to demonstrate that nobody's going to care for Black and Hispanic and Latino business owners and business owners in general more than we do here at Bank of America. There's much more that we need to do. We know that it creates wealth opportunities, not only for the owners of those businesses, but also for the employees. We're trying to create funds that provide access to financial capital to help these businesses grow and bid for opportunities that perhaps they haven't had the opportunity to do in the past. So we recognize our role. And it's not going to be because of some announcement that we make. It's going to be because it will continue to grow and we'll continue to support these businesses because we're going to demonstrate to them that we're listening to them, we understand them, and we'll take the appropriate risks to help them grow, which will be good business. So it's not about charity here. It's about finding good business leaders who have a business plan where she is trying to grow and do more to serve her client base or provide products and services. And they exist. We know that, and we recognize our responsibility to do it. And then obviously, in the community that we live and work in here, as I mentioned, our growth creates opportunities. And it was a distinct honor for me to represent Bank of America in the Mayor's Racial and Equity Initiative that was launched back in November, and play a substantial role to say that we're committed to first generation college students that happen to decide to go to Johnson C. Smith, and not just say Johnson C. Smith, but dream a big dream. And let's make it one of the top 10 best historically Black colleges or universities in the country. And to be part of that initiative to say that we can do this. And it's not going to be just, to be quite frank with you, the money was the easy part. To give $10 million to that effort was the easy part. But what we've recognized, Nick, over time is that providing financial capital, although it's necessary and clearly appreciated, but for me and teammates like me who worked for Bank of America for 10, 20, 30 years, that we can bring our human capital to try to change outcomes, to try to ensure that systemically there's change. Because of the wealth of experience that many of my teammates have. And so I'm proud of the financial commitments that we've made, but I'm perhaps equally proud of the fact that for me, I joined the Johnson C. Smith board, as well as several other business leaders. So we're giving our personal time and knowledge to help the transformation for Johnson C. Smith. But it doesn't stop there. We recognize that in our city, despite the growth and the development that's occurring here, that we still have young people who are born in zip codes where their opportunity for success is really hampered simply because they live in that zip code. And I think we all recognize that's just simply unacceptable to us. And so leaning in on these corridors of opportunity and leaning in partnership with CMS. I'm not an educator. none of my teammates are educators. Perhaps they serve as adjunct professors from time to time, but we're not educators. But somebody taught us how to read a long time ago and helped us understand the importance of going to college. I'm not here to profess that going to college is the only path out of poverty. But for many of us, we know that it is a path. One of my former classmates was President Obama at Columbia University. My hope and my prayer was that when he was selected and I saw something that I had never seen before, didn't know if I'd ever see in my lifetime, that a Black man would become president of the United States. Beyond his skin color, I was hopeful that there would be awareness and acknowledgement of his story, that this young man who raised by his grandparents had a strained relationship with his father, biracial, could go on to some of the best schools in the world. And despite some of the decisions that he made as a young man, that he could grow and develop from those decisions and those experiences and still become the leader of the free world. And that it wasn't just about going to school and getting a diploma or even going to college. No, that he did so well that he went to some of the best schools in the world. And here we are, so many of us today, been touched and influenced by someone who encouraged us, a parent, a friend, a teacher, that encouraged us to pursue and dream. And so my hope and my prayer is that all of us will remember the folks and give honor to those folks who help guide us, direct us, and that we'll find an opportunity, create the time, so more young people within our crescent know your story. And hopefully you can inspire them. So today I'm excited. I'm more enthused about my career and my opportunity here at Bank of America, and as I, look forward to celebrating my 29th anniversary than I was when I first walked in the door. Why? Because I know people now. I've got relationships with people. And it's not what just Kieth Cockrell or Bank of America can do. We can't solve every problem at Bank of America. Even we don't have the money to do that. But I can reach across to the Nick Whartons that I know and ask them to join me. And if it's something that you're interested in, then perhaps we can make 1 + 1 = 3. Or who knows, maybe 1 + 1 can equal 5. And so we're excited today because we want this partnership with CMS and our community college, CP, and Atrium, and see if we can find a way coming through this pandemic to provide greater access to care, both physical as well as emotional care. And yes, I can give Atrium some money to say, don't we have a shared objective that healthy communities are better? And let's do something to support the mayor's initiative around these corridors. Of course, we can agree to do that. But I'm not the educator for how we put clinicians in the schools. I need Atrium's help for that, and to have a partner who's willing to do it, and then take on the additional responsibilities of saying that but there's a nationwide shortage of registered nurses. So can we find a way to perhaps systemically eliminate that issue? How do we train people in these neighborhoods where we know they don't have good health care? They don't have clinicians in these communities. Well, that's why I'm excited about this partnership that we're building, this collaboration between Atrium and Central Piedmont. And it's not that these programs don't exist. How do we scale them? and then do something like go into Renaissance West and put a fence around it and say that we're going to start right here. We're going to adopt that K through 8 school. We're going to ensure that that principal there has everything he needs to ensure that these kids can stay in school, first be in class because they're healthier. We got a clinician on site. Keep them in class. And then be part of their career day. Be proximate so we can encourage them to read. Introduce them to math, to love problem solving. And hopefully through this partnership with Atrium, we'll introduce them to not just careers in financial services, but hopefully we'll start identifying young people who may pursue a career in the medical profession. And they'll graduate with not only just a diploma, but a certification in nursing. And then through this partnership with Central Piedmont, that they can go on, not for just the lowest paying job, but they have a career and they get their CNA too. And because of the nursing schools that we have here, they can go on and get their registered nursing degree. So we're not trying to recruit. I'm not trying to say that there's something wrong with recruiting and trying to attract more registered nurses to our community, but we can grow our own if we can teach these children what it is and what it can potentially do for you. So that's just one example of the role that I believe that we can play here at Bank of America as a leader to solve problems, but as a catalyst to encourage a collaboration of other private companies, community champions and leaders like we've got assembled here, and our elected officials. Because there's never been a time, not at Bank of America, not here in Charlotte, that we have so many leaders, men and women who look like me, who are in positions to make decisions to support this community and drive it forward. It's not a moment. Is it a movement? Well, one thing I do know, it creates a tremendous opportunity. We've got the data. We know what our problems are. Are we willing to jump in and be part of trying to solve these problems, to create opportunities for more children who look like us, more business owners, and more families to understand the value of owning their own home versus renting a room or a house? So, Nick, it's a pleasure to be with you, and I look forward to the dialogue.
Well, Keith, that was, thank you. Thank you for your insights, sharing what drives you, sharing pieces of your servant leadership mindset, and that you are fully engaged and locked in on what's in front of us. Thank you for that presentation. Let me introduce our panel, and then we'll come back and begin the engagement. First, we have Terry Shook, founding partner and principal of Shook Kelly, urban planning and architectural firm. Joy Page, senior director of community relations at the University of North Carolina, Charlotte. David Arrington, owner of Bridge Building Consulting. And these three individuals are heavily involved in the Women's Intercultural Exchange and the Champions organization. I'm so pleased that you've all found time to be with us today. Let me kick off the first question, if I will. This morning, or rather this week, our award-winning national public radio station, WFE, is doing a sort of retrospective on looking at economic mobility and looking at how far we've come since 2014, the Chetney study that listed us 50 out of 50 in economic mobility. And so almost $400 million has been spent over this period trying to shift and move us in economic mobility trajectory for poor people. Now we're looking at close to 300 million, 250 million to focus on racial equity. The question I'll just sort of pose, and I realize that all of this does not rest on Bank of America's shoulders, and Keith, thank you so much for kind of broadening how we all have to be in this together. The Oxfam report over the last few years that looks at poverty globally has listed North Carolina as worst among the 52 states for helping poor people, particularly women, progress. So while Charlotte is a prosperous city, we have certainly our challenges. The whole state, quite frankly, is not doing well at moving people out of poverty. So I just pose the complexity of the problem here. How do you pose to make a difference, obviously, in this city when the whole state, quite frankly, is sort of challenged? I know your focus is Charlotte, but obviously what Bank of America does has large implications in the state. So they focus on low wages, lack of employees being able to organize. There are a lot of factors that retard economic growth, particularly for poor people. So my question to you is, how would you look at that as in comparison to the whole state? Keith, that's a question for you, Keith. I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry, Nick. Well, a couple of things that I would suggest. Charity starts at home, and before you can start pointing fingers, you have to look in the mirror. And so, for us at Bank of America, there are a few things. We made the decision that if you work for Bank of America, you should have a working, livable wage to support a family. And so we've made commitments. We're now at $21 an hour as our minimum starting wage across Bank of America, with a commitment to be at $25 an hour by 2025. But it didn't stop there. Several years back, we started third-party external review from a compensation perspective to ensure gender equity, that there would be truly equal pay for equal work at Bank of America. And that's not just an analysis that we do. We utilize an external entity to do that analysis for us every year in time for bonus and compensation planning and decisioning. And so I'm delighted to say that because, data sets you free. If you're willing to share the information internally at least, and then potentially share it externally, which is where we are at this point in time, then you've got an opportunity to identify the opportunity and then decide if you're going to do something about it. And that's the approach that we've been trying to take, not only here in Charlotte, but really across our entire firm. And so we believe in equity, and we have to demonstrate that in our own practices and policies at Bank of America. And now and I'm not trying to say that we're perfect, but we're at a point now where we're willing to say that, hey, we may not be perfect, but we're willing to share what we're doing, and we're willing to listen and learn from others and steal from them, quite frankly, if we think it can help us advance what we're trying to do.
Let's begin with Joy Page, Springs.
Hey, thanks, Nick and Keith. We certainly appreciate you joining us today, and appreciate the savvy of Bank of America to place you in that position where you did the great. We're glad that you did the great reassessment versus the great retirement or leaving. So, but anyway, I wanted to. You mentioned Austin earlier, and you're traveling tomorrow. Have you, and I'm sure you've got folks within Bank of America that have looked nationally at some of the models that are working, and certainly we appreciate your investment in the Mayor's Racial Equity Fund, and also, increasing the minimum wage and things you're doing for the Institute of Social Capital here at UNC Charlotte. But who's doing it right? What is the model community or city that, just through your travels and research, that is getting this right?
Well, I think over time there have been great examples of various communities doing very, very well over periods of time. Our RTP, that was innovative, and look what it did for our state. But you know what? I think we we may have lost our way. It took some courageous leadership all those years ago to create and envision RTP, and it's time for us to, as a state, reimagine the opportunity. And so this innovation area here in Charlotte that Atrium and others are actively engaged in, I'm tremendously excited about that. Austin, as we mentioned, and I think it's a great place, right down the street from us was Atlanta, and the number of Fortune 500 companies that they've been able to attract, the museums and the cultural heritage of the city is most impressive. But again, we've studied Atlanta, and we think we know some of the things that they've done extremely well. And we have the benefit of being an acquirer, and there's been tons of talent that have joined us from Atlanta. If you go out west, and you take a look at the reemergence, despite what some may say the anti-business climate of California and potential of natural disasters, you still see communities that are growing, and wealth creation and home values continue to increase, and job growth continuing in that state. And so Silicon Valley and San Jose, and the tremendous growth that San Jose has come into existence around is something also that I think we can take, real strong learnings from. So we don't have to bow down to anyone, because I think we do have leaders like Hugh McCall and many others that played a significant role. And the first thing that I would just say, Joy, is that they dreamed a big dream. Those leaders, some 20, 30 years ago believed that Charlotte could be bigger, could be more important, and therefore did something about it. And that was a combination of not only being aggressive in the marketplace from a business perspective, but also, having partnerships in the public policy space to, in fact, change laws, to create the opportunity so we're the beneficiaries of that. So shame on us if we don't continue to push the edge of the envelope, so to speak.
Steve. David, why don't you pose your question?
Sure. First, what's up, Kieth? Good to see you again.
Great to see you.
Absolutely. Glad to be a part of this conversation. So you mentioned a couple of things earlier on. One, I love the aspect of a lot of this work starts at home, as well as you mentioned the importance of relationship. So in my work at Bridge Builder Consulting, we're a people-centered agency, and I focus on leaning into the positive effect of authentic relationship across difference and the impact that can have on bridging our divides and valuing others, as well as addressing oppressive systems. So in a city like ours, Charlotte, where being transactional or throwing money from afar can be the norm, it would be interesting to know, for you as a Black man holding a powerful corporate position, what unique opportunities do you see yourself having to forge intentional, authentic relationships across difference with your white counterparts in an effort to advance racial equity outcomes?
It's a great question, Daley. Throughout my career, early on, I made a decision that I wanted to be known as a champion for diversity and inclusion. And then, like many of us back in the early 2000s, I guess, we went through diversity and inclusion training, and I did this exercise, this colored bead exercise, and you put a colored bead in your clear cup, and it was, what types of people have you hired? Have you fired? And I was an equal opportunist in that category. But there was a question around, what types of people did you invite into your home that you've exposed your children to? And all of a sudden, my cup wasn't as diverse. And so I feel very, very fortunate that I had that aha moment to say that, wait, I think of myself in the business sense as, a champion for diversity, but yet am I really championed diversity throughout my entire life. And so that question has never been far from me, and trying to ensure that, I guess some might call it bridging the gap, or whatever the case may be. I was raised not, I'm not trying to say that I was raised not to see color. I was raised to be attracted to all types of people. And so it is kind of natural for me to, have relationships with, all types of people. But it comes down to, really, for me, sitting down and breaking bread from time to time to really get into some discussions and get beyond the surface of just having an acquaintance that you can pick up the phone and call, but really having the opportunity to assess and get to know. I'm proud of the fact that, for me, one of my closest friends here at Bank of America doesn't look like me. We don't share religion. He's Jewish. I'm not. We're not from the same part of the country. But he's my valued confidant, and I know I am his too. And so for me, I know that I've learned, and as time has moved forward, where I was so focused on performing and making things happen and demonstrating that, I was on this journey for greatness. I wanted to do better and have a great impact. It took me a while, quite honestly, David, to learn the value of relationships and the importance of those relationships. So no matter how hard I've worked or how many hours I've put in, generally two people can get more things done than one. And so that was kind of the learnings that I've had over the course of my career. And then to transform that into, I know what I know, my lived experiences. And you know what? Somebody else has a completely different lived experience. And so some might say, well, there's a tax on us as Black African Americans that we have to educate people. Well, hey, they don't have the same lived experience that we have. And consequently, I don't have the same lived experience. I'm reminded of the Jerry Maguire. I'm going to paraphrase the scene, but when the young boy, is back there in coach and they close that first class curtain, and he says, something to the effect that that's a different scene. His mother corrects him and says, no, that's a different life. And so the opportunity for all of us is, how do we ensure that we don't close those first class curtains anymore? And I'm aware of that now, that I've got access, that I'm in places, I'm in the room, not in all rooms, but I'm in some rooms that I didn't even know they existed before. And so, A, it's acknowledging that I'm there. B, because someone gave me the opportunity to be there, I have to share a voice. I got to get comfortable that they may not have this perspective. And consequently, I have to be open to encouraging others to come into rooms that I'm in that they normally don't participate in. And that's where real learning can occur and real relationships can occur, I think. And we may not always agree on everything, but I know where you're coming from, and that generally makes me better in terms of trying to figure out solutions to advance.
Thank you, Keith. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Keith, for consistently pressing on this notion of getting proximate to issues and people that are different in order to get that perspective. Terry, what's on your mind? What question might you pose?
Well, first, Keith, this has been absolutely amazing. I'm sitting here with a book full of questions that would fill a long dinner party, which, given your comments, maybe that could happen pretty soon.
Let's have dinner.
Let's do it. I'll tell you. The question that's been on my mind since we talked the other day, as we shared when we talked about questions for this, is that, the institutions of this country, be they banks and similar type big corporate structures, were created at a time when the only people in those rooms were white males. And you sit here before us and basically as a great example and defiance of that structure. And what I was particularly taken by, you were talking about how you trying to take your lived experiences, your life experiences, and have those conversations with emerging guys that do look like you, and I assume women too. But what would that conversation be like? The candid conversations with white male and female that are coming up through the ranks, so they understand how to find, in the spirit of WIE and the champions, to find those connective moments when we do find those things that connect us more than divide us. And this is particularly in our day and age, in this time, I think these matters are even more. So what would those conversations look like? And how can you tell those of us that look like me on this call how we can facilitate those with you?
Well, Terry, it's a great question. And the first thing that I guess I would offer would be is that recognize that your lived experience is your lived experience. Today, people know my story because someone found it interesting to write, but we all have a story. We really do. We all have a story. And having a willingness, and I do recognize, I'll give my example, because, I was, put up for adoption, at birth, I never shared that. I was embarrassed by it. My father, I never lived with my father. He was an alcoholic. And I didn't share that. I lost my dad when I was very, very young. But, and I didn't make a conscious decision, Terry, to decide that today I'm coming out and I'm going to share this part of my life. I was actually talking to a group of CMS students. And I don't know, it just came to me to share it. And I could see as I was sharing, I was proud that I was raised by my grandparents. So that's always been part of my story because I was proud of that. But I had never gone there. Why was I raised by my grandparents? And in this particular case, I could see it was touching a student, maybe two. Mm-hmm. And at the conclusion of that conversation, after some tears that were shed, that young person came to me and said that she had been adopted, and then the other one shared that she had been raised by her grandparents. And so we all, life is life, and we all have stuff. And I feel for these young people who are on social media and they're seeing, when did it ever become so popular to share what you're eating for dinner? Like that's a thing. And this life that is so wonderful. But we all know, those of us who've been on this journey for a while, that life has ups and downs, twists and turns. It's not all wonderful, and that clearly hasn't been my situation. But because some people may hear or read about my story, I recognize that it helps. It may help somebody who get out of that, woe is me, that hadn't found that right person that can touch them to inspire them that despite what you're going through, may not have that spiritual foundation to know that, hey, you can pick your head up and there's going to be someone there. So quite frankly, I would say the following is that if we're committed, and I think many of us here today are committed to getting to another destination. What I have learned, Terry, is that sometimes to get people to cross that bridge to a better place, it's not good enough for me to just, meet them halfway. Sometimes I got to go all the way across to the other side. And when I started to learn to share my voice and share my story, become vulnerable, guess what? More and more people started sharing their story. And now the learning can really start to occur.
Very true.
I'm not trying to preach to you. I'm not trying to, necessarily change your point of view. I'm hopeful that just through this discussion that we're having and maybe the relationship that we're building, there's an appreciation. And can we find areas of agreement, commonality? Because again, I've learned in my professional career that, many of us have been parts of rope courses or competitions, and then you get that aha. Well, if we had worked together, we could have had a different outcome, but we were in competition with one another. And that's the amazing thing about what's going on in our society far too frequently now, is that we have these polarized views. And I'm so thankful that I've got young people as children who are in my ear saying, hey, Dad, have you read this? Are you watching that? Don't get caught in that cycle of just listening to this news channel, or, have you introduced yourself to some other news feed just to get some perspective? You may not agree. It may be very difficult for me to actually listen to it, but at least I'm learning, I'm listening, I can understand. And if I do have a strong opposing view, I can come from, I was on a recent panel discussion, sorry to digress. I was on a recent panel discussion for Black History Month. And there was a conservative, Republican law professor on the council with me. They were encouraging us to be nice, that, we weren't going to have the Sunday talk show kind of going at each other. And so, that's not my approach anyway, but what I had the benefit of doing is taking advantage of social media. Not only was he an author of several books, but he had done speaking engagement. So I understood, because I listened, I took the time to listen to him. And so while we're on this panel, he didn't support big government, but he did support, as an example, that government does need to play a role. And at one point during the course of the discussion, Terry, he said that, I think everyone deserves a second chance, and that's where government comes into play. That should be a safety net. Well, I knew he was going to say that because I had done my homework. Mm. So when he said that, I didn't have to come at him and say, I could just say, but I'm glad that we agree on that. But is that enough? What about the young person? They didn't choose to live in that neighborhood and be surrounded by crime and drugs. That's where they are. They're not even being given a first chance. Can we acknowledge that a child, regardless of gender or race or whatever, a child deserves an opportunity to be a productive member of our society?
Which is the big difference between people who are just pro-baby instead of pro-life.
That's right.
That gets them off on a different track.
And so again, we can debate these things all day, but I choose, Terry, to find common ground that isn't as polarizing, so we can try to make some progress. Because if we just stay rooted in, I'm pro-life and you're pro-choice as an example, yeah, I got a point of view. There's no question about that. But I'm trying to make progress. Again, my young adults stay in my ear constantly, Terry, in terms of, is the progress enough? And should we take a stronger stance? Should I be more radical in my point of view? That's debatable. But what I am resolute on is that we must make progress. And I want to be part of making progress.
Thank you so much.
Keith, I realize you said quite emphatically that you were not preaching, but I heard a sermon, and it resonated deep down on the inside. So, I know that you and your wonderful wife, Serena, are leading an effort right now. Why don't you share that?
Well, many of us can be grateful to two just gigantic icons in our community here in Charlotte, and that's former Mayor Harvey Gantt and Mr. Hugh McCall. And both of them are being recognized later this month from UNCF. And And when we first approached them, I and my wife and James Jackson, his wife, Nina, agreed to co-chair this year's Mayor's Mass Ball. And so James is a former retired Bank of America executive. And of course, we thought of Mr. McCall, and Mayor Gant is a fraternity brother. And I just have many of us don't have the opportunity to be the first in our life, but for him to be the first multiple times in his life is really something remarkable, and that I've always been, tremendously inspired by. So when we approached them and said, hey, we'd like to honor you in this year's Mayor's Mass Ball, they both said, no, this community's been kind to us. There's young people like Daly who you should be honoring or something. We said, no, you got it all wrong. You think this is about you. This is really about us. We want to say thank you for all of us that you've touched over these years, that we stand on your shoulders, and we love this community because of your commitment to this community. We finally convinced them to agree to be honored. And as we got into the planning, Nick knows this, we just got creative and decided that, hey, is there something that we could really do beyond just saying thank you that could really honor these two couples and these titans in our community? And so both of them have been committed to education and developing youth to this very day, actively engaged. So we got the support from UNCF to introduce Gant McCall Scholars. And on average, to attend a historically Black college here in North Carolina, it's about $7,500 for 1 year. So we came up with a plan to try and raise $30,000 scholarships, Gant McCall Scholars, to pay for the education for students as a way of demonstrating our love and thanks to these two individuals and all that they've given to us. And so if any of you have been touched by Harvey Gant or Hugh McCall and would like to join us, and we've already raised 9 fully funded $30,000 scholarships. Serena and I are sponsoring a $30,000 scholarship, and that's a $30,000 scholarship. If they choose to go to Elizabeth City, then their 4-year education will be paid for. If they choose to go to UNC Chapel Hill, maybe not so much, but they'll still get $30,000 to defray their cost of college and education. And so if any of you would like to join in raising funds to pay it forward, to educate and ensure that UNC students, this will be eligible for any UNC student in North Carolina. They can attend any school, whether it's a UNC school or not. So if they decide to go to UNC Charlotte, as an example, but they're a UNC student, the scholarship will still be available to them. The criteria for the scholarship will be at least a 2.5 coming out of high school, and they must maintain at least a 2.0 while they're in college. And we can debate the criteria, but our thinking was that for many of these UNCF students, they are first generation college students. Many of them are faced with obstacles, and we're trying to eliminate financial burdens being one of the obstacles for them, not only to attend school, but to stay in school and get that degree. And yes, I believe in academic excellence. There's no question in my mind. I want to encourage academic excellence, but we don't want to provide a scholarship and then a young person still struggling through whatever they're struggling through, and then want to strip away the financial support. So we're pretty resolute in terms of what we're trying to do here. And I hope that if any of you have been touched by Mr. McCall and Mr. Gant and so inclined, just contact us and we'll ensure that most importantly, from my perspective, I would like all those, and they've touched so many organizations and people that I can't keep up, to be quite honest with you, but I would love for them to see a big list of names and organizations that they have supported over the years, and see that it's a way for us to say thank you to them for all that they continue to give to this community. So thank you for that, Nick.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I don't think it's even arguable that both Mr. Gant and Mr. McCall have just done an amazing work for this city, state, and country, quite frankly. So thank you for that. Kelly Little, our board member, I believe, wants to share some thoughts. Kelly?
Thanks, Nick. First and foremost, Keith, it's good to see you. And I want to say it was truly, truly, truly an honor. And I'm really humbled at what you shared today and enjoyed the conversation. Hearing this, and particularly your conversation around leadership, you really shared a lot around emotional intelligence and humanity, right? Because you really emphasized this conversation on relationships and giving back. And that's legacy for me. And so doing this both from the corporate space at Bank of America, as well as in the community, and really exemplifying what mentorship is truly inspiring. And it's a big part of what we do as champions and with we. In the next few months, we will be renaming the mentorship program after Dorothy Counts. And it's going to launch this spring at Harding High School. And so I'm truly excited to share this, particularly in the spirit of what you already shared, and how we've already been not only assisting other schools with this and young students, but also now we'll be introducing young men to the fold. So I just want you to stay tuned for that, both locally and nationally. But also I want to lift up, because I just seen you, I think about 2 weeks ago, with the work that you're doing with My Brother's Keeper. And so when we look at every space that you're in, you exemplify the word hope, right? Because when I can see me and those who are leading organizations, that is the quintessential definition of not only mentorship, but you talk sponsorship. And that's more important to mentorship to me. So thank you for everything that you shared today. And it was truly a great experience. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Kelly. I am wearing a purple tie in recognition of Women's History Month and celebrating women. I'd be remiss if I didn't take time out, Nick, just to acknowledge at least 2 women in my professional career that have been instrumental in helping to guide me, and I can actually call them not just mentors and sponsors, Kelly, but also friends, and that's Andrea Smith and Kathy Basant. Without question, it was Andrea who I went to, and Kathy, to say that, hey, I'm conflicted. I'm at this inflection point in my career here at Bank of America. I'm not angry with Bank of America. I just want to do more, and I think I can do more. And they facilitated giving me this opportunity. I was working for Kathy at the time, and Andrea said basically that, hey, you're going to come work for me, and you're going to lead this market here in our hometown of Charlotte. And so, again, I've been very, very blessed. We're at equity here at Bank of America in many respects. Our percentage of women leaders in the firm, more than 50% of our population worldwide are women. And the degree of Black and Hispanic women that are growing and matriculating through our company. I like to say it this way: I am proud of Bank of America and our journey for diversity and inclusion. I am proud, but I'm not satisfied. And one of the areas that we're going to continue to maintain our focus on is more senior Black and Hispanic women at the top of our organization. We're doing a good job in women in general, but we have an opportunity still. So before I do hang it up here at Bank of America, you know, I anticipate that I'll continue to be a sponsor for more Black, talented, and Hispanic Latino women in our firm and throughout this community. So thanks for allowing me to join you today, Nick. Kelly, it's been a pleasure.
Well, listen, thank you so much. This has been a treasure, actually, for all those who've had a chance to listen and hear your comments on leadership. It is not lost on me that this is Women's History Month. And let me just kind of close by bringing it back around if I can. So close to about 10 years ago, your predecessor, Charles Bowman, sat in a similar chair, and I facilitated a panel of diverse male leaders at a WIE conference that had about 500 women in attendance. And the theme of that conference, or that presentation, that was met with great apprehension initially when these men got on stage with this conference of all women, and it was about men who get it when women lead. And those men, all the expectation was that they leaned into their leadership and talked about how they created inclusive environments for diverse women. And it was an amazing conversation, so amazing that by popular demand, I recall, a core group of women wanted to have another meeting similar with this, a different group and similar and different group of men the following week, and Terry Shipp was involved in that session. So this is just quite interesting that we've come full circle, and here you are, deep in the work, and so we're again honored. And we don't take this moment for granted, that this is a historical moment for the champions, and to just hear how you will lead. So thank you so very much for this time. Thank everyone for coming, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you again.
Have a great day.
You too. Terry, I look forward to dinner.
You got it. Absolutely.
Thank you.